Hi, everybody. I'm Brian McElyea with Dynetics. I'm going to present today on how we've leveraged OpenLM to increase our license officially and also reduce our cost. A little bit about me. I'm the principal mechanical engineer at Dynetics. I'm also fulfilling the role of the CAD and PDM administrator. That's mostly focused on SOLIDWORKS. And then we have also stood up 3D Experience back in middle of 2018. So I'm actually the administrator on that as well. A little bit of my experience of 4 years in manufacturing. I have 22 years of mechanical design experience, 22 years of CAD administration, mostly again on the SOLIDWORKS side. I got into PDM about 17 years ago, managing SOLIDWORKS PDM work group. And then I was the first one I know in the Huntsville area to stand up SOLIDWORKS PDM Enterprise, which is now PDM Professional, right after they bought Kinesio. And then now I'm dabbling in the PLM side with the 3D Experience. Some of our current licenses we track. We have several vendor daemons. I think we're up to like 10 now. We track our primary CAD software here again is SOLIDWORKS. We also have some CATIA V6, and we have a V5C, and then we also have some Creo and Windchill that we track. We also track Mentor graphics software, and then we've just recently added Cameo, which is Dassault Systems bought No Magic, so that's their Magic Draw. It's based on Magic Draw. I think Magic Draw is actually still a product they have, but we have the Cameo. We track FEMAP and ANSYS. We also have some Thermal Desktop, which actually rides on top of AutoCAD and then uses the Send to Fluent code for the NASA thermal analysis suite. And then we also are tracking DOORS, which is used for system requirements. And then looking at our 3D CAD breakdown, we're pretty much 50% SOLIDWORKS now of our total CAD seats. You can see their Creo is about 36%. CATIA V6 is a little over 13. And like I said, we have one seat of CATIA V5 that's mostly used in our on the manufacturing side. So when it comes to managing your licenses, there's really three things you need to know. What licenses do you have? And I've seen this presented earlier, but you have to know what you have. You need to know how they're being used. How do you know if those licenses are being utilized to their fullest? Are they just sitting installed on a machine? If you have standalone seats, you need some way to track that. If it's whether it's being used or not, you're paying for that seat. So, and then who is actually using your licenses? Is there a specific person or a group of folks who's always using a license, who needs it in a surge? Sometimes we have a few specialty softwares here like SOLIDWORKS Composer. It's not used all the time, but it kind of comes and goes in surges when they're doing work instructions and things like that. So most of my presentation, the rest of my presentation is going to be focused on SOLIDWORKS, as that is the primary CAD software we use here, and that's mostly what I'm over. So before OpenLM, I started with Dynetics mid-2017, and most of the users had standalone licenses at the time. We didn't have any way to track usage, and we were just adding licenses as new users came on board. So we realized we needed to make a change there. So after OpenLM, after I started, we started pushing people to network. We had users complaining, I'm not going to be able to have a license. So we started looking at the way we needed to manage this. We looked at Flexera because SOLIDWORKS utilizes the FlexLM license manager. So we looked at Flexera. They have a tracking software, but it's really expensive. And so we had actually looked at building us a homegrown solution, just using the log file and querying that. And then I got to doing a little research, and I found OpenLM, and the price point was right on target. It was basically low entry to get in, especially compared to Flexera. And so we trialed it for a little bit, and we noticed it was going to work out really well for us, so we pulled the trigger on it. The biggest thing for us here is actually being able to visualize the usage in heat maps. I mean, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. The heat maps just really gives you a really good instant picture of how hot the usage is, how active your users are pulling from that pool, etc. So you can actually pull user reports. We've had no problem justifying additional licenses with the output from OpenLM when we need them. Here's a little bit of some of the stuff we use for usage visualization. This is a usage chart you can get, but what really sells it is the heat map right here. You can instantly see how hot your licenses are. This is a seat of Cameo, so it's not being utilized that much. You see a couple of times here where it's got pretty hot, but that's just kind of an example to show that right there. So get back to SOLIDWORKS, our licensing goals were to reduce our license costs, to maximize our license usage. We wanted to ensure that the SOLIDWORKS licenses we had were being almost completely used before we added additional licenses. And you got to weigh that with your denials and stuff like that. But you need these metrics to be able to make these decisions and spend this money. And as I mentioned, when I started Dynetics, they had already kind of started moving some users to network. But I come in right kind of in the middle of that. So our case study here, I'm just going to look back at 2018. We bought OpenLM the end of 2017. So that's as far 2018, first of 2018 is when I have records basically. And then I went to the first of the year in so this is January 1, 2018 to January 1, 2021. I used our VAR renewal for seat counts to get an idea of the seats that we purchased, and I pulled the user counts from OpenLM. I am including our network and standalone seats in this chart. I'm mostly going to focus on the network seats as we ended up transitioning folks to there, but you can see our slopes from 28 to 21, 2018 to 2021, we've added some standalone seats as well. And the slopes are actually, fairly close to identical, but look at our unique user count. This unique user count is network only. So we've had a lot of growth right here. We've had almost a 260% increase in unique users from 2018 to 2021. We've increased our network license seat by almost 68%. And we've actually increased our standalone seats by just a little over 84%, but we do require a detailed justification to add standalone seats. And I want to stress that most of our standalone seats now are provisioned in air gap situations in labs that has no network activity. So that's kind of a special case. These seats can't see the network. We have to have standalone seats in there. On our current network, or corporate network, we only have 8 standalone licenses on our corporate network. Everybody else is using network licensing for SOLIDWORKS. And 3 of those 8 are reserved for admin and our PDM task machines to actually create the PDFs and step files and whatnot. But the unique user count is only counting those users who access the network license. So you can see here the significant increase we've had here, but we've only had to increase our count of network licenses by 68%. So I think those numbers kind of speak to themselves. And we wouldn't know this if we weren't tracking our licenses. So looking at those numbers, $1,182,000, that is a very conservative estimate of capital savings that we've realized by just monitoring our license usage for SOLIDWORKS standalone seats in the 3 years since our 2018 renewal. And this is actually only assuming a 50% of the unique user increase we actually have, because we have had some user roll off. We've had some users come on. That unique user count is from 2018 to 2021. We have had folks leave. We've had a lot of folks come on. So This is only using 50% of that user increase, and we've still realized over $1 million in savings. And this is also only procuring SOLIDWORKS standard seats, which is what we usually pull. Sometimes we have professional and premium requested, but most users get by with standard seats. They don't really require those additional modules, and we do have several of those on there. But so that is a very significant increase. I have calculated my return on investment at one time last year, and it was just insane. I mean, it was like, I can't even remember the number now, but it was way over 100% return on investment by just going with OpenLM based on what we have saved in our software. And again, this is only SOLIDWORKS. So also some other things that help manage our network licenses, other than just tracking the usage, there's several things you can do to control your licenses. And that's the network license manager Hygiene. So most of the license managers have option files, or they have some mechanism for actually controlling your licenses. And I think this was mentioned in an earlier presentation. You can control access to this to better manage your licenses. You can specify license timeouts. So if a user opens a seat of SOLIDWORKS and pulls it and then just lets it sit there and open, that license actually gets returned back to the pool at a certain time if you have that specified. You can create groups of folks to put in. This makes it easier to manage. You can allow or deny access to users' groups. So we have specialty software. I mentioned Composer. We have SOLIDWORKS simulation, SOLIDWORKS flow. Not everybody needs that. So I actually control that in the license file. So only certain people can pull that. It keeps somebody from actually just going and pulling it. Because most of the time when you install SOLIDWORKS by default, that add-in is checked, and when they launch it, they're going to pull that license whether they're using it or not. So this allows you to control that. You can reserve certain licenses for certain users, groups, and hosts. You can include borrowing, including a time limit on the number that can be borrowed and the length of time that can be borrowed for. I mentioned this in the panel discussion. The COVID really hit us hard because we were kind of unprepared for that. And I ended up having over half of my network seats were borrowed like the second day everybody was teleworking. So I had to get that under control. I did that in the license file. And then OpenLM actually has an extension that will let you control the option file for various license managers right from the OpenLM interface. You don't have to go edit the text file. And that's actually a pretty robust tool. I've actually tested that. So this is what you get with a SOLIDWORKS out of the box file. You get a timeout of SOLIDWORKS for 30 minutes, 1800 seconds. This is our modified file. I actually ended up setting timeouts for basically all of our products. We recently had some issues with DraftSite. People were opening DraftSite and leaving it open. I had to put a timeout in there for that. So you can see in my text file here, I've actually kind of got it a little bit organized. So other people can come in if they need to, if I'm out or something, and they know what's going on. So here's some groups I have set up that lets me be able to allocate these licenses. So like the people who want to use flow simulation, you got to be in this group to be able to pull a flow simulation license. And same thing for Composer, electrical, so on and so forth. And then you can actually reserve certain licenses. You can include, so this is basically reserving this group, reserving the software module for this group, basically. And then once COVID hit, I had to control the borrowing. And so now people have to email me, because I had a few users that would actually just borrow licenses all the time. But once we went into a telework situation, which we still kind of are at this point in time, people have to email and ask me. So I actually track it in here with a comment with their actual request and the date that I added them, just so I can kind of track that. And then I'm including these modules in this. So if you're not in this group, you can't even borrow these licenses. And also wanted to mention here, I reserved Visualize Boost for a render farm. You can reserve that to a certain machine, because in the SOLIDWORKS license manager, somebody could just go in there and actually borrow that license as well, even though I'm controlling it down here. So I've just, basically this machine is the only machine that can pull this visualized boost, which is, that's where it's installed. So that's where it needs to be. Then you can actually define your borrow time period in hours. So I think I've got that set for like 4 days. And then you actually have a low water limit, which actually limits the number of licenses that can be borrowed or that cannot be borrowed. So say you have, 100 licenses of SolidWorks and you want to only allow 5 to be borrowed, you set the low water to 95, and it would actually allow 5 of those licenses to be borrowed. And that's basically my presentation. My final thoughts on license management is know what you have and how it's being utilized. You want to organize and manage your licenses, and you want to track license usage and denials. And go ahead and floor up for questions now if we have any.
Thank you, Brian, so much. We actually have a question. There are 2 of them. What was the return of investment using OpenLM?
Pardon, say that again, please. Oh, the return of investment.
Yeah.
I did not calculate it. I was going to calculate it here. I believe, I can't recall off the top of my head what that return on investment is. I should have included that. And when I saw that mentioned in the poll earlier, I was like, I probably should have calculated that. And I went trying to pull numbers, but I didn't get them all. But I think it's actually on y'all's website, actually. I want to say it was like 150%, if not higher, return on investment. It was insane.
Right.
But I can figure that out, and I can get that out for us to answer after this is over.
Okay. Hey, thank you. So the next question is a general one. How many engineers are there in your company?
Well, I know for mechanical, I think we're right now hovering probably around 350 mechanical engineers that pull licenses for 3D CAD. I mean, we have a lot of electricals and systems engineers. So when we talk engineering, it's like what specific discipline are you talking about? But tracking this CAD is, I think we probably have about 350. I know for OpenLM, we're actually provisioned for 600 users. But like I say, we have like 10 different vendor daemons we're tracking across. So all of those don't pull 3D CAD. So I would say about 350 mechanicals that pull right now.
Okay. Okay. There are no more questions. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, Brian.
Maybe I can ask one question. Something that we talking with license managers, and they get a lot of objections from the engineers. No, why do you take this fit for me? I wanted to use this license. And in many cases, even we see like they treat the license as a status of symbol. Like a symbol of status. Okay, no, I'm like a team leader and I need this license, even though you don't really use it. So how did you deal with this objections?
You've got to have management buy-in for sure to come in and do something like that. And so we definitely, our management supported us in this. And it was kind of like, this is just the way it's going to be done. And it after a couple of weeks and people saw they were going to be able to get their licenses and have them. I mean, we still had a few users that we do have some users that do some reverse engineering that go out on site. So they need standalone licenses, things like that. But we require justification to get a standalone license, because that's basically an asset we're going to buy that nobody else has access to, whether you're using it or not. And it's just, those are, it's just not that cost effective now. So now almost it's not a deal, but when we were moving it, there was a lot of people that were hanging on to them for dear life. Like, you can't take my license from me. I won't be able to work. But it's kind of, nobody likes change.
Yes.
So, but you got to have management buy-in at the top to be able to do something like this. And as more and more people in the company see this, we've had other people that use other, like the Cameo, for instance. We just added that within the last 2 months, probably. We have folks that go to OpenLM or go to our IT department, and they're like, "Hey, I need to know how my licenses are being used," or they want to be able to track their licenses, and they send them to me, and we'll get a vendor daemon for them. If I think we had one available for the Cameo on our license, but the IT department knows it. They like it. They like the way we can justify, because our IT department, it's all of our CAD software is corporate resources under the IT budget. So they really like that we can track this as well. And then we can really justify that when we say we need licenses, we can show them we need licenses. Yes. We can pull up denial reports and heat maps. So
I have another question. You mentioned that you are also using monitoring IBM doors. I believe this is something IBM doors, rational doors. It's a development license, as far as I know.
It's to manage system requirements. And it's used on the government side a lot. I know like 3D Experience has a module for that as well. But most of the folks around here where I work, it's government contractors, there's aerospace. Most of the folks around here use doors, and it's just to track engineering requirements, basically.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Very interesting, I must say. It's very impressive, the work you did. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Brian? I don't see any other question in the Q&A box. So I guess, thank you, Brian, very much for the insights.
Thank you for having me.